Hello everyone, welcome back. I am Kris. It is Sunday morning, 8:02, and I'm debating. I've been up since 5:30, and I am hungry. I have not eaten breakfast. This is cup number 3 of coffee, and I am craving food, but I don't want to make it. And I'm too lazy to go anywhere, so we'll see what happens. There's a place that does brunch in about 2 hours, and I thought, man, that sounds good. It really does. But it's 40-minute drive on back roads, so it's not bad. But I don't know if I have the interest to go anywhere. All right, well, this is episode number, I think this is 8. Is this 8? This is number 8. How the Ottomans defeated the last Crusade. Nicopolis? Is it Nicopolis or Nicopolis? No, Nicopolis. I added a double O. Nicopolis. No, Nicopolis. I almost said 69. I did some weeding in the garden yesterday, by the way. If you could do that. Bare minimum, please. Subscribe to the channel. Click on the thanks button. If you want to support the channel, keep it running. I did some weeding in the garden, and literal garden, not backyard, as some people might, say. And I have a thing called a rattlesnake watermelon, and they don't grow, like watermelon are circle. Well, these grow out kind of like oblong. What's going on? These are kind of like oblong. And I was doing some weeding, and I have one that is pretty good size. It's bigger than a foot. It's like a, shoe. It's longer than a shoe. And, these are my little moccasins. All right? Don't make fun of me. I got 2 pair. They're comfortable. They've got little fur on the inside. Yeah, I pamper myself. That's what I do. So yeah, I got, and then I have 5 or 6, whatever, they're just regular watermelon growing. I've got a ton of tomatoes, but they're still green. I had squash, but it's no longer making them, but they're getting bulbs again. So I'm going to guess it's going to be another one. I got some green beans, and I have more cucumber than I know what to do. Every day I have to go out and pick 5 or 6 cucumber. I have like 20 of them right now. And I'm just yelling at my tortoises to hurry up and eat more because I just feel like they're just going to go bad. I'm eating cucumber, just walking around the house. It's getting pretty bad. I should have had one this morning, now that I think about it. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and start here. I just was talking. I'm going to drink some coffee, and we'll get into watching them defeat the last Crusade. Oh, real fast. Has nothing to do with the video. A while ago, I saw the movie Kingdom of Heaven. And I know that's and I'm going to butcher that. I know him as Saladin, but I've heard Saladin, and then I've heard other ways to say his name. I'm white, so I'll never say it properly. Not on purpose. And I saw that movie was up. Like I could watch it. And I wanted to watch it again. Because I've seen little clips. I saw it one time before. I don't remember it. I barely remember it. But I remember the guy who played Saladin was awesome. I don't know what it was. And of course, I play that Civilization on PlayStation 3 still. So whenever he appears in the game, because he represents the Arab nations, and whenever he appears, I always end up going to war with the guy. He always wants to start a war with me. So, very fun. But anyways, I was going to watch that movie again. I don't know when. Probably sometime. Maybe, I don't know. I'll watch it sometime, I swear. All right, I'm going to stop talking.
In the year 1396, one of the largest allied armies medieval Christendom had ever assembled was mobilized and ready to march upon the House of Osman. The fate of the Ottoman presence in the Balkans, and perhaps the empire as a whole, was on the line. In this episode of our series on the history of the Ottoman Empire, We will cover one of the most critical military engagements in Ottoman history, the Battle of Nicopolis, the crowning achievement of Sultan Bayezid I, the Thunderbolt. If you want any chance of getting a cool name like that, you better start by looking the part, and we've got an offer to help, built with high-end materials and materials. It result discount codes to get 10-inch ring, a ring. 2 years after initially declaring the anti-Ottoman Crusade, King Sigismund of Hungary was finally ready to face the forces of the Thunderbolt. During the late summer of 1396, the Crusader army paraded out of Buda and began their march south alongside the left bank of the Danube. Knowing that he could not supply his large army in one spot for any length of time,
I'm just going to say something that's entertaining to me. They're all leaving Buda. There's a small town. Well, I don't remember now how far away it is. I drove through it yesterday, but there's a small town named Buda here in Illinois, so it's very funny.
the Hungarian king opted for a more mobile solution, the preemptive invasion of Ottoman Bulgaria. This would be the first phase of his anti-Ottoman crusade, as re-establishing Christian rule in the region would serve as a buffer to his kingdom against Ottoman aggression. After taking Bulgaria, the Crusaders likely planned to move further south and lift the blockade of Constantinople. Alongside the main Crusader contingent heading south, a smaller eastern contingent was sent through Transylvania.
Buda, Pest are two different cities? This is going to be a stupid question. Is it combined to be one city today, or is it still kind of look like this and they're so close together that they're just named Budapest? I ask because there's two cities in Illinois, Bloomington, Normal, and everyone typically will say Bloomington, Normal. But Bloomington is one city, Normal is another, and they're like that. They're just right together.
Into Wallachia to restore Mircea I to his throne. Capturing the region would give Sigismund control over the northern bank of the Danube, which would play an essential role in his future invasion of Ottoman Bulgaria. Meanwhile, the Crusader fleet supplied by Genoa, Venice and the Knights Hospitaller had begun their naval operations in the Aegean Sea, resulting in the harassment of Ottoman shipping in the region. In addition to these developments, the Bosporus and Dardanelles Straits were also blocked by the Crusader navy, thus permanently cutting off Bayezid from his Anatolian holdings. After Constantinople was resupplied with goods and additional troops, a small contingent of the Crusader navy sailed into the Black Sea and then into the Danube River to rendezvous with the main Crusader army. Back in the west, the main Crusader army under Sigismund crossed into the lands of Bayezid's vassal, the Tsardom of Vidin, through the coastal town of Oshova. After spending 8 days crossing over the Danube, the army found itself at the gates of the regional capital of Vidin. Seeing that a large Crusader army was at his gates, and witnessing the death of a Bulgarian monarch at the hands of Bayezid the previous year, Tsar Ivan Stratsimir of Vidin opened the gates of his kingdom to the Crusaders. What followed would be the massacre and imprisonment of the local Ottoman garrison in the capital town. During the aftermath of the bloody event, Stratsimir resupplied the Crusader army and gave Sigismund free passage into Ottoman Bulgaria through his realm. While the main Crusader army began its operations in the local region, the smaller Crusader force marching into Wallachia had also secured some gains of its own. The forces of the pro-Ottoman Wallachian usurper Vlad I had been pushed back into the eastern portions of Wallachia, while Mircea I regained his capital of Koter de Argeș. This gave the Hungarian king access to large sections of the northern bank of the Danube, which would be vital in resupplying his vast mobile host, which marched on the opposite bank of the river. However, despite these early successes, not all would go as intended for the Crusader army. Tensions between the Western Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches had been ongoing since the days of the East-West Schism of 1054 and the Fourth Crusade of 1204. Both groups often saw the members of the opposing church as untrustworthy, and in some cases heretical, on par with Muslims. These sectarian tensions between the members of the two churches would rear their ugly heads during Sigismund's crusade. In the days following Vidin's submission, Crusader forces fanned out across the countryside of the Tsardom and plundered the region indiscriminately. As the main Crusader army marched west alongside the Danube, they arrived at the strongly fortified town of Oryahovo. Seeing that the odds were heavily against them, the local Ottoman garrison of the town offered King Sigismund terms of surrender in return for their lives, and the lives of the Muslim populace of the town. The Hungarian king accepted the offer, as he had plans for the region after the Crusade. However, after the surrender of the town, the Franco-Burgundian element of the Crusader army, in an act of open defiance, disregarded the terms of peace. The local Ottoman garrison was massacred, alongside the town's Muslim and Eastern Orthodox populace, much to the horror and frustration of Sigismund. Despite the internal religious tension bubbling up within his army, King Sigismund continued towards the Ottoman fortress town of Nicopolis. In the year after its capture, the former Bulgarian capital had been strengthened with new fortifications and a well-supplied garrison led by Ottoman marcher lord Doğan Bey. The town stood on a high position overlooking the Danube and had been a vital ferry location for the Ottomans going into Wallachia. According to Sigismund, Nicopolis had to be captured if Christian rule were ever to return to Bulgaria. As a result, during the first weeks of September, the fortress of Nicopolis was put under siege. This time around, the Ottoman defenders stood their ground, for they had most likely heard about the brutal fates of their brethren in Vidin and Oryahovo. Seeing that Nicopolis would not surrender, the Crusader army constructed siege works and mines over the next few days, while supplies and reinforcements from Wallachia and the Crusader fleet arrived from the Danube. During the Crusaders' advance, the Sultan had been personally overseeing the blockade of Constantinople. Now he focused on the advancing enemy, and began mustering forces to confront his foe directly. Seeing that he had to strike the Crusader army before they could gain a significant foothold in Bulgaria, Bayezid gave out orders for his armies in the Balkans, including his vassal Stefan Lazarevich, to gather in Edirne and Plovdiv. The Sultan planned on catching the Crusader army off guard by assembling his army behind the Balkans mountains, far from the prying eyes of Crusader scouting parties, then force marching said army to Nicopolis. In the first weeks of September, Bayezid would leave a small force to continue the blockade of Constantinople, while he and his 20,000-strong Ottoman host began his march north to meet the forces of Sigismund. The Ottoman response to the Crusade would be a swift one. In later centuries, it took an Ottoman army up to 6 weeks to assemble its ranks, and another 3 weeks to travel from Edirne to the Danube.
I mean, look, it took Sigismund 2 years to get his ducks in a row, I guess you could say, to start this fight. So he also has the advantage of how am I trying to say this? They're coming to his turf, so he's able to, I would guess, probably be able to pull more people by just, they're invading, so we need help. We need to fight. And, everyone, all the men that he comes with, they're vital. Because it's not going to be as easy for him to be reinforced. That's the balls of trying to invade another territory. That it's not too far away, but at the same time, back then, yeah, it is. So having to take all your men this distance, you better pick your fights, because losing your people, that hurts, because reinforcements aren't as easy.
However, completing this journey took the Thunderbolt only 2 weeks. Much to the surprise and panic of the Crusaders, on the 22nd of September, Bayezid's host was spotted near Tarnovo by their scouting parties in the region. Only 2 days later, the Ottoman Sultan had established a war camp several kilometers south of Nicopolis. According to Ottoman chronicles, under the shroud of darkness, Bayezid rode to the walls of Nicopolis to inform the local Ottoman garrison of the arrival of his army. The Sultan promised Doğan Bey and his men that come the next day, he would shatter the Crusader army beneath the walls of their fortress. In retaliation for the sudden arrival of the Ottoman army at Nicopolis, thousands of the remaining Muslim prisoners from Vidin and Oryahovo were rounded up near the Crusader camp and executed. The gruesome struggle for Nicopolis had just begun. Even though they had defeated a minor Ottoman scouting party in the days before Bayezid's arrival, many in the Crusader camp were skeptical about how to approach their current situation. The Crusader host was now stuck between the local garrison of Nicopolis and Bayezid's large host, and worse still, they had the impassable Danube River to their rear. In one swift move, the Ottoman Sultan had managed to besiege the besiegers of Nicopolis. As a result of their situation, a war council was called by Sigismund during the evening of the 24th of September. The decision to face the Ottoman host the following morning was agreed on. However, the Hungarian king advised to take a more cautious approach. He wanted the Wallachian and Transylvanian contingents of his army to head the Crusader assault, as they had the most experience in fighting against the Ottomans. After all, the veteran voivode Mircea of Wallachia had defeated Bayezid on 2 separate occasions in the years before the Crusade. Meanwhile, Sigismund also advised the Franco-Burgundian and Hungarian elements of the army to support the main attack in case of an Ottoman counterattack. This advice fell on deaf ears, as Sigismund's thoughtful strategy was ignored due to internal divisions within the Crusader camp once again resurfacing. Many Franco-Burgundian leaders were outraged with Sigismund's plan, seeing it as dishonourable to enter battle behind the Wallachians and Transylvanians, whom they regarded as peasants. The Constable of France, Philippe of Artois, even accused the Hungarian monarch of trying to steal the honour and glory of the battle for himself. After many hours of shouting and fussing, Sigismund would cave in to the demands of the Franco-Burgundian leaders. Their Western knights would now head the Crusader assault. During the morning of September 25th, the numerically even Ottoman and Crusader armies deployed for battle south of Nicopolis. On the Crusader side, the mounted Franco-Burgundian knights made up the first line, while King Sigismund and his mainly Hungarian contingent made up the second line behind them. Wallachian troops led by Mircea were stationed on the Crusader left wing, while Transylvanian troops led by Stefan Lagfi were stationed on the Crusader right wing. A small contingent of Crusaders was left behind to continue the siege on Nicopolis.
Not necessarily to continue the siege. My opinion, it's to stop. If you have everyone facing Bayezid, and they're all looking, they're all going that way, then he could just send troops out and just start attacking you from behind. So you have to keep some troops here to prevent that. I almost said flank attack, but to stop your rear from being attacked. So it's not necessarily to keep the siege going, I would think, because these guys get out and get behind you. Now you got to turn around and fight through them to try to get back to the boats. Also, if you have everyone looking, I'm going to say south, okay, to where Bayezid is. They could, what would stop them from getting out and maybe setting the boats on fire? So now they really don't have a way to escape, which is something that I would be considering right now. I'm going to pronounce his name completely wrong. I want to call him Dogan. Dujan. That's his name now. Dujan. That's what I would be wanting to do, starting to set these boats on fire. But that could also be a completely stupid plan. Who knows?
Unlike their Crusader counterparts, the Ottoman army was far more centralized in its command structure. Ottoman Akinci light horsemen made up the front line, while behind them was a mix of irregular light infantry from Anatolia and the Balkans, called Azarbs. Behind them were Bayezid's household troops, also known as the Capiculu, which comprised several thousand elite Janissaries and Capiculu Sipahi heavy cavalry. They were led by the Sultan himself and his Grand Vizier Jandilazade Ali Pasha. Meanwhile, the Ottoman right wing consisted of Balkan Timali Sipahi heavy cavalry, led by the Sultan's eldest son, Suleiman Çelebi. On the Ottoman left wing were the Anatolian Timali Sipahi heavy cavalry, led by Kara Timurtash Pasha. Lastly, on the extreme Ottoman left wing were the mounted Serbian knights, led by their prince, Stefan Lazarevic. In the hours leading up to the battle, King Sigismund sent scouting parties to locate Ottoman positions south of Nicopolis to find the camps Bayezid had concealed from the Crusaders.
I saw this and thought, why has he got some kind of rhino mask on? And then I saw this and I was like, oh yeah, he just puts that down. Yep. But I'm not going to say that because it makes me sound stupid. So that's if I were to have said it. That was a stupid comment, but I didn't say it. So it's perfectly fine. Is that how that works?
Due to this situation, the battle was delayed for another 2 hours, much to the annoyance of the Franco-Burgundian element of the army. Soon the waiting became too much for the Frenchmen to bear. Then a battle cry by Philippe of Artois was heard as he seized a banner of the Virgin Mary. "Forward in the name of God and St. George! Today you shall see me a valorous knight!" Before a general order to advance was given, Franco-Burgundian knights under their eager commanders unexpectedly charged forward to seek out the enemy themselves, much to the horror of many senior leaders in the Crusader camp. After some time advancing forward, off in the distance, the Franco-Burgundian line spotted Ottoman Akinji light horsemen scouting their positions. Seeing an opportunity to gain glory on the battlefield, the mounted Western Knights of Europe proceeded to charge into the lightly armoured ranks of the Ottoman Akinjis, resulting in heavy losses for the Muslims. With the remaining Akinji retreating back towards the Ottoman camp and believing they had won a great victory, the Franco-Burgundian mounted knights continued moving forward to make contact with the main Ottoman line. However, as the knights continued riding forward, they encountered a steep slope topped by a forest of sharpened stakes. Behind the stakes lay the main Ottoman line of Azabs, who were armed with various weapons such as axes, maces, bows and spears. Under immense arrow fire from the enemy, many knights dismounted from their horses to get through the Ottoman defences uphill, but many of the Franco-Burgundians were wounded alongside their steeds. Despite this, the poorly armoured Azabs were no match against the mighty Knights of Europe, and many were killed in hand-to-hand combat. Seeing that this front line was in grave danger of collapsing, Bayezid ordered for his Tamali Sipahi heavy cavalry to hit the flanks of the Franco-Burgundian host, while his Janissaries reinforced the Ottoman front line. This stabilized the Ottoman line, but the fierce, bloody conflict for the slope continued, as the best knights of Western Europe went toe-to-toe with the Sultan's own elite troops. As the battle raged on, King Sigismund's contingent of the Crusader army, made up of infantry, had finally arrived on the battlefield. Wanting to prevent the two Crusader contingents from uniting their forces at this critical moment in the battle, the now anxious Bayezid played his last hand. Sending forth his remaining Tamali Sipahi cavalry and the remnants of his Akinji and Azab units, the Ottoman Sultan ordered the creation of a new battle line to be formed between the two Crusader hosts. Meanwhile, the Sultan's own Kapikulu Sipahi cavalry...
Although I understand why he's doing that, because their ranks might really slam into the Ottomans, that's ballsy. It's extremely ballsy. Because if these guys try to retreat, they're going to be retreating into these guys, which, yeah, you're going to probably, whoopsie-daisy, accidentally hit a few of you with swords. But at the same time, that it's ballsy because there's no line, there's no backup for these guys. These guys are basically stopping them so that these guys can kill them. That was a great explanation, Kris. You clearly have military experience. These guys right here fight them, and these guys keep fighting each other theirs. Good job, Kris.
Was sent forward to flank around and charged into the rear of the Franco-Burgundian knights. The latter move brought about heavy casualties for the Western Knights.
Okay. All right. Okay.
As they were now surrounded on both sides by Bayezid's elite household troops. As the battle for the slope continued, the newly formed Ottoman line crashed into Sigismund's contingent of the Crusader army. Although taking heavy losses, the Ottoman line successfully prevented the Hungarian monarch from uniting his forces with the Franco-Burgundians, who were at this point in the battle exhausted after hours of fighting under the burning morning sun. With Sigismund unable to break through Ottoman lines to reach the Franco-Burgundians, panic began to spread in the Crusader army. perhaps seeing the day was lost and wanting to preserve their troops for future wars against the Ottomans, both Wallachian and Transylvanian contingents of the Crusader host began to withdraw from the battle. Before long, Sigismund's host was now stranded, and the remaining Franco-Burgundians were surrendering to Ottoman troops in droves. At this critical junction, Bayezid delivered the final blow of the battle. The Ottoman Sultan ordered his mounted Serbian knights, led by Stefan Lazarevic, to charge the flank of the remaining Hungarian army.
In this cavalry charge, Stefan encountered his Crusader brother-in-law, Nicopolis, and assisted him in escaping from Ottoman captivity. Okay, listen, I understand why you would do that. It's your brother-in-law. I get it. I'd probably do the same. Unless you really dislike your brother-in-law, then you know you're gonna help him escape to heaven or hell with your sword. Yeah, then I can understand. Yeah. I don't fault him for that.
The following Serbian charge would be decisive, as it left many dead on the battlefield, thus resulting in the complete rout of the remaining Crusader army. The remnants of Sigismund's army that survived the Ottoman onslaught made their way up north to the Danube, as Phoenician and Genoese ships began preparations for evacuation operations. In full panic, many Crusaders drowned in the deep waters of the Danube, while the Hungarian king barely escaped with his own life as he was pushed into the river before being saved, dragged onto a local fishing vessel by his personal guard. On his way back to Hungary, Sigismund would place the blame for the Crusader defeat on the Franco-Burgundians, stating that their pride and vanity had cost them the day. The Battle of Nicopolis ended in a decisive Ottoman victory, and was the crowning achievement of Sultan Bayezid I's reign. Having suffered a few thousand casualties, the Ottoman Sultan had defeated and scattered a great European Crusader army in a single battle. The following morning after his victory, in retribution for the massacre of Muslim prisoners of Vidin and Oyahovo, the Thunderbolt ordered all those he had taken prisoner in the battle be killed. What followed would be a general massacre of thousands of Crusader soldiers, in which many were stripped of their clothing and decapitated. Only a handful of high-ranking noblemen were spared from the onslaught, such as John of Navarre. They were ransomed off to their respective European holdings in the following years. The defeat at Nicopolis caused a wave of shock around Europe, as for the first time, the wider continent was personally made aware of the impending threat of the Ottoman Sultanate. It would take half a century for European powers to recoup and launch another major crusade against Edirne. As a result of the battle, the Ottoman political and military presence in the Balkans was secured. In the following years, Bayezid ramped up his blockade on the Byzantine capital of Constantinople, as no support from Europe now dared to intervene in his military matters. In the next episode, we will go through the last years of the Thunderbolt's reign.
All right. Well, that is... Hold on.
As a new power in the east would come knocking on the gates of his sultanate. To ensure you don't miss that...
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because there seemed like, there's still some time left, so... All right. Well, this was good. That was a ballsy move to put that line up above, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't think about sending someone then to go after the... I'm going to call them the French soldiers, to come after and, wipe those guys out. And then Sigismund having his two, I'm phasing, I'm back. Having his two flanks. Really? Having his two flanks up here. That didn't look good. Having the two groups up here that take off. That I understand loyalty for your men and not wanting to. My nose itches. Hold on. Stop the video. Okay. I understand having loyalty for your men. I get that. Not wanting to put them in a bad situation. Completely understand. Feeling like all hope is lost and fleeing. I get it. But you didn't even try, my dude. Neither of you did. If you haven't put your men into the fight, and I granted Sigismund maybe has to call them to get into it, but you're also in charge of your guys, and you have to see we're losing this battle. It's starting to turn. Let's hit. You attacking is also a morale boost for those guys on your side fighting. So if you're not willing to get your guys into the fight and reinvigorate this line, then why'd you even show up? And that goes for both of the guys that took off. Like, just imagine, and I'm not saying that they could have won, but just imagine if they came in and they just kind of hit and then swung around to kind of get the flanks of the Ottomans. We could be talking about a completely different side victory here. Maybe not, and I'm not saying maybe not, but you didn't even try. You came all that way, and you protected your people, and I appreciate that. But when you start to see, okay, if we don't do something, a lot of these guys are going to die. So let's just take off. Let's just leave. Well, that drives me nuts. And it's like almost every single video that you see where there's another wave of troops that will be coming in or soldiers there for support, and they don't. And it's like this turned negative because you switch so fast. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and end this here. I'm going to do another one of these videos. I got to get some more coffee. Then I'm going to do another one. And yeah, until then, have a good day. Have a good night.